Good evening and welcome. It's now 6 o'clock. I'm handing over to Dr. Sharon Harbour. Thank you. Dr. Harbour, over to you.
Good evening, colleagues. Welcome. My name is Sharon Harbour, and I'm the chairperson of the South African Registrars Association, SARA. So welcome to our first webinar for 2024. For those who don't know, SARA is a special interest group of the South African Medical Association, SAMA. And we were formed essentially to ensure that we improve the lives of registrars when it comes to both their professional and their academic lives. So last year, we conducted a survey, and this survey essentially was looking into how registrars are progressing in terms of their MMED. And some of the main findings were that, number one, registrars are not receiving enough dedicated time to conduct their MMED, and that, number two, those who did have time perhaps weren't receiving enough support in actually completing their MMED. And it was quite alarming for us to find that a number of the participants within our survey were in their final year of their registrar training and had not even received ethical clearance. And so we as SARA aim to do two things. One was to engage with the HPCSA and the South African College of Deans to ensure that more registrars are able to have more dedicated time to complete their research. And number two is to begin working hand in hand with registrars like you to see what we can do to assist you in terms of completing your MMED. And so welcome to our first meeting or our first webinar. And this will be a series of webinars which will look into important aspects of your MA completion. It'll happen every 2 weeks, and we'll be looking at very important topics. So for this week, we're looking into choosing a research topic. We will also be looking into things like basic methodology, getting ethical approval, as well as what you need to do to complete your manuscript and also to ensure that it's published. I think that as SAMA members who are registrars, we are lucky because we have access to members who are part of the education committees, members who are deans or previous deans, but also within our own SAMA industry, we've housed numerous journals. We know the South African Medical Journal, the South African Journal of Ethics. And these are things that I feel that as registrars who are SAMA members, we should be able to benefit firsthand by doing this. And so the series of webinars will then culminate in July with what we're having, which is a registrar retreat. So this will be specifically a registrar writing retreat, and it will be an all expense paid weekend for all qualifying registrars. And the aim is that this weekend, registrars who are selected will have access to writing editors, have access to people who are in charge of ethics and biostatisticians. And hopefully by the end of that impact, you'd either have completed your manuscript or have made significant progress in terms of completing the manuscript. And I hope that you guys will continue to engage with us. We'll continue to have more surveys, and I think in the upcoming weeks, we'll start beginning with applications for the registrar writing retreat. So without any further ado, welcome once again to our first webinar. And the topic for tonight is how to choose a research topic. I think that's the first place you start. What exactly it is that you want to look into as a registrar? Are you going big? Are you going small? Are you trying to manage your time? What exactly are you doing? So our first speaker for the evening will be Dr. Tlali. Dr. Tlali is a registrar in anatomical pathology at the University of Witwatersrand. He is about midway through his registrar journey, and I think he'll be able to give us his input in terms of how he came to his research title and his research topic, and what tips he can give you to assist. Just some housekeeping rules is at the end of, we'll be having 3 speakers, and these 3 speakers will be in various phases of their careers. And at the end of all 3 speakers, we'll give all the registrars and maybe MOs who are present an opportunity to ask whatever questions are burning and seek any advice that they would like to. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Dr. Tlali, our first presenter for this evening.
Good evening, colleagues. Thank you so much, Dr. Harbour, for that lovely introduction. Just bear with me while I attempt to share my screen. Okay, just give me a second. While I put it in presenter mode.
Dr. Tlali, at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, there's a little screen icon next to the slider. You can click on that.
Yeah, I think my laptop is being a bit slow. There we go. Okay, cool. Okay. Please confirm if you can see my slides.
We can see them. Thank you.
All right. So, as Dr. Harbour has already introduced me, I am a fourth-year registrar in anatomical pathology at WITS. I did my undergraduate training at UCT, for which I graduated in 2017. I then went on to do my internship and community service training at the East London Health Complex. I am also the former CHUDASA chairperson and currently the SARA vice chairperson to our lovely chair. Okay, so jumping straight into my research topic. My research topic's name is the determinants of registrar attrition in anatomical pathology training in South African universities. What that basically means that we are studying the reasons behind why people do not complete their training in anatomical pathology in South Africa. And my study includes asking quantitative and qualitative questions to understand why people finished their training and why certain people didn't finish their training. And we're hoping to use the study to improve the quality of training in South Africa and increase the throughput in training in anatomical pathology. My study, my MMED is co-supervised, so I've got two supervisors, and I will go into what tips into getting a good supervisor a little bit in the next slide of this presentation. So with regards to choosing my topic, when I started my registrar training, there was a lot of negativity in my department regarding whether or not people finish anatomical pathology training. And that really got me inspired to try and understand why that's the case. And it became quite clear to me already in the beginning of my training that this issue is not just isolated to Wits University, but is actually a global issue. And when I did my literature review, it turns out there aren't any studies relating to this topic for anatomical pathology. Other disciplines have got a lot of literature regarding the attrition rates, but anatomical pathology unfortunately didn't. So that really inspired me to really follow through on this topic. Currently my research is during its data capturing phase, and I should hopefully be done with it by the end of this year. All right, so when it comes to selecting a topic, my advice would be to look at topics that interest you in your field, but also a lot of the time the supervisors that are available in the respective departments often have their own topics that they're working on, be it with previous MMEDs from different candidates or things that they've just found interest in. I just wanted to spend some time giving tips on how to find a suitable supervisor, because a good supervisor is a vital part in your experience of doing your MMED, and it's a predictor of your success of your project. So I just listed a few tips, and I'll go through them now. So you need to identify your research interests, as these can help determine the kind of supervisor that will supervise your MMED. So if, for example, I'll use pathology as an example. If I'm interested in gynecological pathology, there are only a few consultants who show an interest in gynecological pathology. So that interest can direct me towards a certain supervisor. And then research potential, supervisors. So you look at the research activities and publications of the potential supervisors to ensure that their previous literature and expertise aligns with what you're trying to achieve from your MMED. And then it's good to look at faculty department policies, just to make sure that, you know, you are free to choose whichever supervisor or whichever topic you would like. You know, I don't think it's quite common, but some departments might have limitations and kind of direct you into a certain topic or supervisor. And then my next tip is that to begin your search for a supervisor and a topic quite early in your registrar training. I suggest within the first 2 months, and this allows you to get the ball rolling and before things get quite hectic in your registrar training. Number 5, effective communication. So when approaching a supervisor and throughout your MMED project, it is important to have everything on record, clear and concise emails, and outlining your interests at the time, and or even outlining where you are and where you'd like to be during your project. 6, schedule meetings, get to know your supervisor, discuss your different ideas, be willing to adapt here and there. As it's important to allowing your research to grow, and creating a work relationship with your supervisor. And then number 7, which is something that I had to face, is that be open to co-supervision. Depending on your research, you might have one or more supervisors, especially if you're integrating your work with other disciplines. And then number 8 is that, you need to be resilient. Don't be discouraged if your supervisor is unable to take you on. It is important to find someone who can dedicate the necessary time and resources to your project, even when during your project you enter snags and delays, low moments, high moments. Just be resilient. And then remember, a good supervisor will not only have the expertise in your area of interest, but will also be someone whom you can build strong collaborative working relationships in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Tsipile. Thank you. I think that you raise a very important point when it comes to just the thought about supervising and co-supervision. I say this because I think that, having a co-supervisor allows you to leverage kind of different kinds of experiences and different kinds of expertise. And sometimes it can even strengthen your study. Because I think, let's say, for example, Tsipile is a registrar in anatomical pathology. If he had chosen to do a study in gynae pathology, it would strengthen his study, not only for him to have his supervisor as a pathologist, but perhaps have a co-supervisor who's a gynecologist. But I think something that it's also important to keep in mind is that the more supervisors you have, the more personalities you need to deal with, but also the more busy schedules you also need to deal with. So perhaps tips, right now, do you have a co-supervisor? And how's that working for you?
Yes, I do have a co-supervisor. So the reason why that was the case in my situation is that my main supervisor was a junior consultant at the time, and he seemed to show a lot of passion towards retaining of registrars. But when I approached him, he did not feel quite comfortable yet to supervise a project by himself. And therefore, we got somebody who was also quite experienced. I found that personally, it has worked perfectly fine for me because in as much as I can relate with the younger consultant, the older consultant definitely does bring a lot of institutional knowledge and has helped a lot when we've had snags with ethics applications and protocol submissions and stuff like that. Yeah, so it has worked out pretty fair for me. In terms of personalities, I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, schedules have luckily been haven't been an issue for me.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Sakina. So as I said earlier, I think we have registrars and ex-registrars in varying areas of their career. So we've had Sepile, who is in the middle of his career, still a registrar. And next up, we're going to have Dr. Tina Dix. Dr. Dix is our newly minted consultant as of 2023. He is just published. He is excited. He is a specialist, as I said, in virology at Tygerberg Hospital currently. And we're looking forward to hear, what he has to say as someone who's actually, completed the whole process. So over to you, Dr. Dix.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harbour, and thank you for that welcome. I'm going to share my screen. While that is loading, just a quick correction. I am, in fact, a hematopathologist, not a virologist. So please don't ask me anything unless it's about EBV. That's about the only virus I know something about. Right. So, like Dr. Harbour introduced me, my name is Tina Dix. Quickly, a bit of background on me. Previously, I did my undergrad at Tux, and then I pursued a master's in philosophy in the UK for a year. After that, I joined the Registrar program, and then I was faced with this topic of doing more research. Luckily, research is something that I quite enjoy. I think it can be quite exciting, and I hope that people don't find it too daunting. If they do, hopefully I can give you some pointers just to help get you started. So what I try to do for my talk is just to distill down some of the big questions that I had, or some of the big things that I considered when I was approaching my research topic. And I think I was able to break it down kind of into 3 questions about what I want to do and 3 questions regarding what I can do. So looking at the wants, I think it's very important, point number 1, that, like Dr. Clally said as well, you find a topic that you have a certain interest in. At times, your MMED research project is going to drag. You're going to have a lot going on in your life. And I feel if you don't have a baseline level of interest in your topic, then you're going to make life extremely difficult for yourself. So find an area that's an interesting question, something that you've been wondering about for some time. And if you don't have a particular topic in mind, you don't know what your field of expertise would be, maybe you've just entered specialization and you're wondering, what is out there, what are some of the potential topics that I could look into. Speak to your colleagues, speak to them, maybe read some of their MMED proposals, maybe read through their ethics protocols, see how they formulated their questions, or even ask them, listen, what did you do in the beginning? Barring that, another way where you can find on what's going on in your field of expertise or soon to be expertise is to read through the literature. And I'd really encourage you, it's very good training to read through some articles. It introduces you to scientific language, the way that academics write, which will be the standard that your MMED will be judged against. And this is not something that comes naturally to anyone, doesn't come naturally to doctors either. We have our own way of writing notes in the file, etc. So I think it is important to just have an idea what to expect when you formulate a research question, what questions you want to be answered, which kind of leads into the second point. Find some gap in the knowledge. That is what you want to do. At the end of the day, a research question or hypothesis is something that you want to test, and you see there's a gap somewhere in some form, and that's something that you want to answer. So that's something I definitely felt is something you want your research to be able to do. And then research, even though the research methodology or the reason for research in the MMED is to introduce the student or the registrar to the way that research is performed, so they can think critically about other people's research and maybe to form as a foundation, should they be doing research in future, and how to keep up with their CPD activities. You can also think of what answering my research question is going to do for public knowledge or the public good. I enjoyed listening to Dr. Klali's topic because I know even at Stellenbosch, where I did my specialization, we have a problem with anatomical pathology, and there are people who drop out. So this is a question, there is a need, and being able to answer that question may lead to better retention of anatomical pathology registrars. So I think in that way, that's a very good research topic that he has in order to contribute to public knowledge. So that's what I think we kind of aspire to. That's what, for myself at least, what I wanted to do in a research topic. But then we have to get practical, and then we have to ask 3 more questions. What can I do? What is in the realm of possibility? And I think the first question there is to look at your environment. What is your environment capable of? Is there some data that's available already? If you're looking at the results of a certain testing of certain diseases, are these diseases that you see in your center? Is this testing available in your center? Is it something practical? Try not to go too high in the sky and look for weird and wonderful things, but try and do something where you can collect a good number of data points and use that to guide your research analysis. And then another question, and again, the previous speaker touched on this quite well, is can I identify a supervisor for this? Can I find someone who is passionate, someone who has expertise, someone who will gel with me and find the topic that I find interesting or the question that I'm asking interesting? Because at the end of the day, your supervisor is really partaking in this journey with you. And a good supervisor can really make or break your time as a researcher during your MMED. And then finally, what is realistic on you? Registrar time is not an easy time. I don't think anyone who spent more than a few months in registrar training would say that it's necessarily easy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of pressure from you from a service delivery point of view, from an academic point of view. A lot of us are also in the stage of our lives where a lot of life is happening. A lot of big decisions are being made. So be kind to yourself when you're choosing a research topic, and think about what can I reliably wish to achieve with the time that I have available to do this research. What expertise is there available in my center to guide us? What resources do I have in order to guide my research? So what are the kind of like logistical things that are confining my ability to do something, to do research? I don't think it's a good idea to look for novel drug targets or, do very deep science during your research time. Rather do something that will teach you the research methods and just get you through the MMED thesis. So these are the 6 questions that I had, and this is how I answered them. And this is the topic that I came up with. As I said, I'm a hematopathologist, so there is quite a lot of hematopathology jargon in here. But my topic was the mutational landscape of classical myeloproliferative neoplasms in the Western Cape province in South Africa. So this topic answered my first question, which is it engaged my interest. So I always had an interest in genetics. I always liked myeloid cancer. So in hematology, we speak about lymphoid cancer and myeloid cancers. Was a very interesting cancer, and specifically the myeloid cancer. So that was a tick. This was kind of right up my alley, and something that I found interesting. And I knew if I was looking at this data late in the night, I'll still find it relatively interesting, at least. I also knew that there's a question that I could ask, and there's something that I could address. And that specific question was, how does our mutational landscape differ from the rest of the world? Is there something that makes South Africa unique? Is there maybe some sort of unmet need in South Africa that we are maybe different from other countries, especially since most of the genetic data comes from America, Europe, and some from Australia? The other thing is to find a unique kind of like angle that you can take on your research question. So in South Africa, we don't have a lot of data on a ton of diseases. And maybe if we have some data, some other researcher can use that to inform their sort of testing in low to middle income countries. The fourth thing was now looking at what I can do. I knew that Stellenbosch University has been testing for myeloproliferative neoplasms for the past 12 years. So I knew that there was a treasure trove of data that I could delve through, which would again help to inform my topic. And I was also able to identify 2 supervisors, so a main supervisor and a co-supervisor, both of which had a strong interest in genetics. So I knew they would share my passion for the topic. And finally, I knew what my time constraints were. I knew it was going to be a busy time during my MMED. So I tried to make it as simple as possible for me, and this is what worked for me, was to just say, let's do straightforward retrospective study so that I can answer questions and leave enough time for other things. So make sure that I have a question, I answer it well, collect good data points, able to analyze that in certain ways, and look like basic things. I look at the age of patients with certain mutations, the gender that they have, and some basic hematological parameters. What does their FBC look like? What's their hemoglobin? What's their white cell counting? Is there a difference between the different mutations? And do the differences that I see in our population, how do they compare with those of the rest of the world? And finally, I will just say that in choosing a research topic, I would also suggest, if you can, to start early. Maybe some of you listening don't have that luxury anymore. But something that really helped me through my MA thesis was remembering that perfection is the enemy of completion. You really want to put something out there that you can be proud of, but don't spend hours and hours on minutia. Yes, work hard. Yes, be proud of it. But remember, at the end of the day, you want to get this through so that you can show people that you understand research and that you can fulfill that requirement as one of many for specialization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tinus. And I apologize. I know you're a hematopathologist. I'm so sorry. I think you raise a really good point in terms of being practical. And I think that, like, similar to the quote that you said, I heard a quote recently, and it says that perfect is the enemy of good. And I think that even, especially as a registrar starting out, like, the ambition is high. You want to get a Nobel Peace Prize. You want to do the most. But it's important for our registrars to be aware that there's an opportunity cost, because you're not just there to do research. And as you said, life is happening. I don't know, people may have kids or partners or parents or other things to be doing. There's the job, there's a CMSA that's nagging. And I think it's quite important, as you said, to be aware that it's all right for this to just answer the question in terms of, can I perform research? Can I critically analyze our different studies? And that's okay. And, you know, as this is your first one, you can use that and build on it. Your next follow-up research can be great, because you won't have as many other pressures of life. But I think it's more important to make sure you start something and finish it than to be overly ambitious and you crash or you drop other balls. Do you have any other thing to add regarding that?
No, I think you summarized what the core of my talk is beautifully. And I also see this, I saw it in myself. I see it in our young registrars when they start. Very ambitious, you know, you start, you're excited to get going, you know, you want to identify some novel molecule in pathology, or, you know, you really want your research to change the world. And I don't know, actually, without being too corny, maybe the research should just change you. Maybe it should just teach you the techniques that you need. And then you can go on. And then if you want to do more research, if you feel like that is your passion, then the world is your oyster and you have the tools to do that. But I think for the purposes of an MMED, treat it as an MMED, treat it as part of the path to specialization, and just get it done.
Completely agree. And I think just in closing is that, as I said earlier, because we have access to SAMJ, other African journals, as SAMA, I think that, perhaps with our help, we can get people in touch with the publishers early, that although the research may be simple, we can still make sure that you get something that's published worthy. And I think that is everyone's goal, or a lot of people's goals as registrars. So you don't have to sacrifice so choosing a more simple topic does not necessarily mean that you won't get published, for example.
I'll just quickly add to that and say, you would be surprised once you start reading how many areas of research there are that the data is simply lacking. So many of them. So even simple things that you could do, the study that I did, for example, no one had done a similar study in Africa. So, just by me sitting and taking data that was relatively freely available, if you are working in an academic center, and publishing that, that's novel research. And especially coming from Africa, I think there's a lot that we can contribute if we just put our head on the block. So don't think anything is too simple. Someone somewhere is going to find it useful.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jakes. So our last speaker for this evening will be Dr. Otal. So Dr. Otal, hi. He is a medical manager at Karl Bremer Hospital. He actually supports a lot of people doing research because essentially people need to go through him to do research. He's also a member of the SARA, one of the committee members in SARA, and he'll be letting us know what his journey was and just giving us a few tips here and there. Over to you, Dr. Otal.
All right, Shannon, thank you so much, Dr. Harbour, and thanks for the opportunity. Colleagues, there's just a few things that I saw when the other presenters were going through the slides. And what I want to say is start with the end in mind. I think that's research. Sometimes you know what the outcome will be. So if you have the end in mind, you can obviously track back and choose a topic in that way. And then also get in touch with, with publishers early so that you know what the criteria is. You'll see my research was very, very simple. I'm somebody that don't want to waste a lot of time. I want to get to the point, and I want to get going. So let me just move my... Okay, so that's the flyer. So I'm just making sure I'm in the correct meeting. Okay, so I've put this slide. It's a stolen slide, but this is something that I've learned while I was doing research. So don't wait until you feel confident enough to act. Your confidence builds as you take action. So tonight is also part of, motivating the registrars or for those who wants to do research, actually just to get started. So this is what I used. I mean, some of you are familiar with the PICO sort of acronym or model, whichever way you want to do it. And it's very much to the point. Population, who do you want to research? What is it that you want to do? Is there a comparison group? And what is it that you want to achieve? Or what is it that you want to measure? Or what is it that you want to show? There's things all around you every day when you work. I also made a note here. I used to take pictures and email myself every day on possible research topics. So I probably had like 30 or 40 things to choose from. And then eventually I ended up with just taking the shortcut, which I'll show you now. So choose a topic that engages your interest or that you have passion for, because it is really difficult to find time to do research. I studied at UCT, and I looked at the requirements. I read up, and it's about 600 hours that you need to spend on an MMED. So that is a lot of time that you need to spend. So you got to choose a topic that relates to your work, because there's just no time to look at other things unless you have a 25-hour day. And then, choose a topic that you identify as requiring investigation and to contribute to evidence-based knowledge. And then, very important, engage in academic debate with your colleagues, supervisors, and determine the feasibility. So we know sometimes we see something, we then go like a horse with blinkers on. We only see this one topic and we push against all odds, but we ignore advice. So Discuss with colleagues. The more you talk about something, the more you hear it yourself, and that is how you can self-correct as well. So you got to look at what the problem is that you are facing and seeing, and you got to ask a question clearly. And is the question focused enough? Is it simple enough? And can you state a hypothesis from it? And is there enough information to gain sufficient data on it? Now, sometimes there's not enough information, and that is also your gap, where you can also say there is no information on this topic. This is the other themes around this topic, but I want to specifically look at this gap. What is the significance and the relevance? Then the context is very important. So I'm a family physician. I've also done some other postgraduate studies in occupational medicine, obstetrics, and emergency medicine. So stick to one context, either primary or your district hospital or your secondary hospital or tertiary hospital, wherever you find yourself. So don't try and blur the context. It's just going to make it so much more difficult for you. And then just be clear, concise, and describe your problem and how you want to address it. So you see something, how do you want to address that problem? So this is a shortcut that I took. So I was evaluating the implementation of a pediatric allergy training program in urban primary care centers. So basically the background to this was that at Red Cross, the allergology department, saw the gap that it's very difficult to treat kids with allergic conditions, and they implemented a training program. All I did was I was one of the attendees to the program. They wanted to upskill primary healthcare providers in how to treat asthma, atopic dermatitis, and allergic rhinitis. They had a program. It was sort of online was the first part. Once you completed the online, they invite you to the practical. They show you how to do wet wrapping, how to do the proper use of a nasal spray, etc. And then you would complete the program. So all I did was I just mapped out the program at every stage, looked at how many people participated, and I wrote it up. So basically the background was the problem that we did see was that there was very few primary care practitioners that knew how to treat these allergies. So, a third of South Africans, suffer from allergies during their life, and the highest morbidity is in childhood. And we know the incidence and prevalence of allergic diseases is increasing worldwide. Sorry, it feels like I'm doing a presentation now. And then the treatment, the capacity to treat these conditions has not been met. And that was the gap that was seen, that is inappropriate management at primary care level. And, this leads to, unscheduled hospital visits, preventable admissions, and people just being reliant on the tertiary service. So everybody wanted to be seen by the specialist at Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital, spend a lot of money to get to the hospital, but they could have gotten the same treatment in the community at the primary care center. And this is basically the outreach that was done from Red Cross. So I mentioned already that the Allergy Foundation of South Africa and Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital, they designed this hybrid program for in-service training. So there was online modules, face-to-face seminars, and an in-reach and outreach support. So what in-reach support means is basically once you've completed the program, they would come to your facility where you are working, sit in the room with you while you consult with patients and, show you certain things. Outreach means that, sorry, I'm just swapping the two around. You could either go to Red Cross to get some training and work in their department, and outreach means that they would come to you. And then the aim of the study was simply just to evaluate the implementation of this training program. It was cross-sectional, it was descriptive, so I just described everything that I saw. The study population was all the staff who registered for the training program. It was voluntary recruitment into the survey, and then it was program level data. So nobody was excluded. So basically, I just looked at everybody that participated in the training program, and then from there, I worked out my demographics. So I was just, like I said, I was just describing everything, all the data that was collected. I looked at attendance registers. I looked at the online self-administered question, or I gave them an online self-administered questionnaire just to ask them how accessible was the program, is it relevant to where they are working at the moment, and would they recommend this program to anybody else that spoke to their acceptability. Simple results: 340 staff members that registered, 89 participated in the online survey, from the 340 that registered, so I just described the demographics, 215 were doctors, 66 nurses, 2 facility managers, 2 pharmacists, and then 55 could not be determined. And then the throughput of the program, so 120 of the 340 completed the online component, so that was 35.3%. So there was obviously a problem. And you see, as you find these things, you can obviously just exploit. And then in terms of the practicality thereof, so you needed to complete the online component before you got invited to the practical. So you can see that the practical participants was only 120. Whereas the online component was the 340 people that has registered. So you can already see an attrition rate, of people dropping out from online to practical. So it just made my life easier. And then 59 people out of the 120 completed the practical. So there you have it. You've got 59 people out of 340. So the overall throughput was only like 17.4%. So there is a problem. So now we just wanted to describe the problem and see what the problem was about. So I set up a tool and I just wanted to see. So I just highlighted a few things for you. So medical officers were more likely to complete the training program when they were compared to nurses. So having easy access to the training program, which means you were close to Red Cross, etc., made it easier for you to complete, if you had senior or mentor support. So that also speaks to, you see, so there's a line that you can cite from our article, because even as a registrar, when you're doing an MMED, if you've got senior or mentor support, like in terms of a supervisor, your chances of completing is obviously great. Having enough allocated time to complete the program. So, that spoke to time of work and so forth. And allowing people actually to come to the training for one day, having opportunities to complete the training from home or having time of work, and then having good internet access. So this spoke to hybrid training. A lot of people say you must attend these courses online, but if your internet is poor, I mean, your chances of completing is really poor, and then having adequate time. So it was also during the COVID period. I mean, I started my reach time in 2018, and I mean, by the end of 2018, I was already on my way with my topic. And then COVID obviously prevented us from going any further. So that was just my conclusions of the study. So there's significant factors that plays a role, which means there are barriers to implementing, successful training programs. And that is my 10 minutes. And in order to summarize, it's just, again, pay attention to PICO. So just look at a population, what intervention you want to do, comparison group, and start with the end in mind. What is it that you want to measure, or what is it that you want to show? I actually just wanted to show who participated in the program, did they complete, how many completed, what were the problems with completing, and that's it. Yeah, I've said all these things already. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Otal. Just a quick one. I think after deciding on your research topic, then how did you go about picking your supervisor or selecting your supervisor?
So it's very simple. So if you talk to people and you say, look, I'm looking for a research topic, they just pointed me to Red Cross. And I mean, I got in touch with Prof. Levine. He's obviously seriously crazy about allergies in kids. And I said, look, can I measure your program? He's like, by all means. Done. He was affiliated to UCT, and then I just got a co-supervisor in the family medicine department. So I think one of the speakers also said there's currently ongoing research happening. It can be so simple where you just piggyback onto one line of the research, just something that you want to know, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, the bottom line is just to get into a topic, get that supervisor early, and read the instructions, people. Go onto your university portal, see what they want, just comply with what they want, and go through it. Don't worry about, getting that big prize. You just want to have your MMED done. That's it, so that you can focus on the exams. So the supervisor for me was then easy. I just, piggybacked onto Prof. Michael Levine, and then there were other colleagues in the department there as well, but they didn't meet the criteria to be named as a co-author, basically. So, but I mean, they gave you guidance, and I mean, I had so many people to review what I wrote.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think you raise a good point in terms of using what's already there instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. I think that's important. Thank you so much, Dr. Otal.
Yes.
So as we move on to the next segment, I just want to remind everyone of a few things. One is we conducted a survey last year on how registrars are doing with their MMED, but we're trying to conduct a second survey. So we'd like to encourage everyone who's logged on, please, to click into the chat. To check on the chat and click onto the survey, and please complete the survey. We think it'll take you approximately 5 minutes. So even as you're on this call right now, there's nothing stopping you. We don't mind if you're multitasking. So please, please, please do complete the survey. It's important for us to get feedback and to get as many participants as possible so that we can offer you a service that is meaningful and that actually helps you to complete the work that you need to get done. And the second thing is, remember, as I said, as registrars, I think most of us, the moment you say research, like we want to make sure that it's published, but I just want to let everyone know that the head of publishing in SAMA is actually part of this call and is part of this webinar. And so they're here for you. And they're here to ensure that whatever you do decide to do is successful and, you know, will be published worthy. So if that is your goal and you're on this call, just don't worry, stick with us. And you'll get to know her in future webinars. But essentially, I think maybe just to continue with what the other registrars are saying, that yes, you need your MMED to pass, but don't let that be the reason you don't, you know, do your other tasks, be it your work, life, or, you know, pass your CMSA exams, because you can do something that is maybe more attainable or simpler, and, you know, still complete the degree and still become the specialist that you're trying to be. All right, so I'm hoping everyone has started looking into the survey, and I'll now just open and go through the questions and answers. All right, so our first question says, are MMED strict? And I think I'll just open it to any of our panelists to answer. The first question is, are MMED strict on what study formats you're allowed to use? Does it always have to be a research question that involves interventions and outcomes, or can it be observational? How are you free to choose the study design, and how are you limited? I think we can start with Dr. Otal because his was an observational. His was an observational study, so perhaps he can start with that, and anyone else can jump in.
Yeah. No, thanks for that question, Sharon, and I think it's Sadia Aiden. So you can do descriptive or observational studies. I mean, there's nothing stops you. What you need to do for your MMED is actually just to learn, you know, research protocols and research study designs and how to do research. So if you do interventions, I mean, interventions is prospective. So you got to do the intervention and then wait for the intervention to happen. You can obviously do it in retrospect as well. I mean, that might be easy. So you could look at the intervention that has happened and then measure the outcomes, because I mean, that's what I've done. So that's describing the intervention and what has happened. So how are you free to choose the study design, and how are you limited? You're not really limited, and you just need to decide on what you want to study, and then choose your study design. And then when you chat to when you chat to a supervisor, or you've identified a supervisor, then they will just hone down for you and say, look, this might be the best one, cross-sectional now, or you need to do a cohort. I mean, look, randomized controlled trials will give you the best evidence, but as a registrar, I don't know. I don't think you'll have time to look at, you know, who's blinded and who's not blinded in order to get an outcome. So I think if there are things in front of you, just describe it. I mean, I'm just looking at a simple research study in my hospital at the moment. I was just looking at how to communicate with doctors in a busy district hospital. Is it WhatsApp? Is it via speed dial? Is it email, etc.? So, you know, we find that WhatsApp is easy, but it's very invasive. Then if you have a speed dial system where there's four numbers that you call, I'm just looking at describing, you know, how people feel about that. And that could be a MMED.
I think that's interesting, I think. And if there's anyone who's listening and is looking for a supervisor who's a registrar, here's an example of a possible MMED topic. Hint, hint. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Otal. I'll open it up to the other to the other panelists to see if they have anything else to add. Dr. Dix, Dr. Hlali.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Dr. Hotel covered that question pretty well. I think so. Just to emphasize what you was trying to say as well is that part of the discussion when I brought forward my MMED was whether or not it's too big for an MMED. So there's an element to how complex one's MMED should be. That takes into mind consideration that there's a lot that registrars go through during their reg training, and you don't want your topic to be too overwhelming to kind of hamper your ability to learn to become the specialist in the field that you're training in. And then I think it goes on to Kanyiso's question. Sorry for backtracking you there, Chairperson. And it reads, is it true that a non-interventional study is preferable over MMED? And I think so. And it's based on the fact that, intervention as Dr. Hotel has mentioned, that it does have a time aspect to it where you have to wait to see the outcome of the intervention. And that can often even take like way longer than the time that you take in your reg time. So yeah, so the simpler the topic, the better. As he said, that the whole point of an MMED is to prove that you know how to do a research project, methodologies, drawing up a protocol, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I'll just move on to the last question. And I think something that we really cannot overstate is the fact that you don't want your MMED to be the reason that you don't have enough time to prepare for your CMSA exams or to fulfill your other responsibilities. I think, yes, it is an important part of your journey as a registrar, but there are so many ways. As I said, there are many ways to skin a cat. There are many ways to be efficient in conducting your research. There are many ways to be efficient in choosing your topic, choosing your supervisor, and making sure that you're able to complete this and learn what you're supposed to learn. Because the outcome, as you said, isn't for you to get a Nobel Peace Prize, but the outcome is for you to prove that you know how to conduct research. And if you stick to that, and I think that we're not trying to be jaded or discourage people from doing great things, but I think ultimately you have 4 to 5 years essentially to complete this. So this is a very limited amount of time, and there's a lot you have to do in that time. So make sure that you use the time wisely. I'll move on to the last question, and it says, can you navigate from one supervisor to another if you don't find the expected help? Maybe Dr. Dix, are you able to assist us with that?
Yeah, I'll pick up that question. So I think in the ideal world, that is something that you want to prevent from the get-go. It introduces unnecessary anxiety to you. There's a new supervisor who needs to get up to scratch, etc. So I think that does make it difficult. But there are situations where it needs to happen. I would definitely try to prevent that. So something that we started at our department is working on a memorandum of understanding that you sign, and you sign it once a year. And that is just basically a contract to protect you as the student and to protect your supervisor. You both are kind of entering into a contract where there's a bit of give and take. You expect certain things from your supervisor. You expect them to give you feedback within a reasonable amount of time. And in the same way, your supervisor expected some things of you. They, for example, expect you to take their recommendations seriously, to make adjustments when they suggest them. So I think working on something like a memorandum of understanding, and maybe that's something that the HOD at your department will be able to help you with, because it also helps him to know what's happening in his department, is a good way forward. So yes, try and prevent switching supervisors, maybe rather get a co-supervisor on if possible, so that it's building on some sort of foundation. but there's no technical reason that I can think of why changing supervisors shouldn't be possible.
Thank you for that. I think that is just very good advice in terms of to protect yourself as well as the supervisor. Start working on memorandums of understanding. I know at the University of Stellenbosch, they also advocate for it. And another thing is just to touch on what Dr. Ortel said previously is start with the end in mind. And what I mean by that is that in certain universities, they'll have certain areas for MMED submission and the MMED criteria and what they want exactly from your MMED. So even if you're still playing with the topic, begin to look at, what exactly the requirements are, so you know what it is. So you know that whatever you decide to do will fulfill those requirements. Dr. Ortel, you wanted to step in?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Harbour. No, I just wanted to echo with what Dr. Dick said, is that there's a memorandum of agreement with the institutions. So even before you start choosing your supervisor, read through the instructions, like I said. It's on your university portal. So I was at UCT, so you go to VULA, you see what is required in order to even, approach your supervisor. What is the requirement? So when you have that first meeting, you come with a document and, the supervisor will tell you, look, I can do this or I can't, etc. Instead of having, verbal communications on WhatsApp or email, but then there's no formal, document signed and people don't know what the objectives are. So don't waste time. Just get those documents and look at the instructions. And then lastly, I want to say also is you can swap supervisors, and whatever is done is not lost, because you can actually then just send that to the new supervisor. And that's also a baseline of where to start off with, because I know of other colleagues that have swapped supervisors and previous inputs has been taken into consideration. And actually, not a lot was done because people think they're far from the finish line. And maybe they just had some personality issues with the other supervisor. And then with the new supervisor, the person just adds one thing and then poof, there you're over the line.
Yeah,
So nothing is lost if you swap your super, unless you change your whole topic, then that's a different nightmare.
Thank you, Dr. Ortel. I'll just move on to the last question. With universities where there may be administrative issues with regards to doing an MMED, is it possible to choose a supervisor from another university? Do you have any takers on that?
I'll go for that one. So technically not, you can't. You got to have somebody that's affiliated to the university, because what happens is when your research gets marked, it gets marked by colleagues from another university. So it doesn't get marked in your university. So remember, the universities, there's also some financial, reward or gain for universities when research is completed. So that's something that's not often spoken about, but that is why universities also support the candidates in order to complete their research, because there's some financial gain for the university. So you must have somebody that's primarily affiliated to the university.
I agree 100%. And perhaps what you can do is you can have someone from outside the university be your co-supervisor. So if you need additional support, there's nothing wrong with having. So for me, I have my supervisor from my university as well as someone from the University of Western Cape. So there's nothing wrong with you having another one or two co-supervisors to assist you, but 100% Randall. On to the last question that we have. In your experience, what is the right month to start focusing on your MMED once you started settling into your registrar program? Maybe let me give it to Dr. Dix, Dr. Ortel. Oh, sorry, no, Dr. Dix and Dr. Tlali.
That's a very good question. Thank you. So I think maybe from the trend of all three panelists, you might have heard that we're all very keen on you just starting. You just start the process, like Dr. Ortel said. Find out, start with the administrative things, find it out. And I think speak to your colleagues, find out what their experience is. It's going to be different from each speciality one to the next. My personal experience in my department, we are strongly encouraged to finish our ethics submission within the first 6 months of starting at the program, which is very quick. And it might sound too quick to some of you, but there are a lot of there's a lot to be gained from that. It's very nice to be able to know ethics is out of the way. We write primaries within our training time, so you get your ethics out of the way. You can focus on writing your primaries, and then it's so much easier once your primaries are done. You can quickly dust off your MMED and leave a substantial portion of time, upwards of a year, for you to focus on CMSA exams. That's an ideal setting. That was not the journey that I had, but that is definitely something to consider. That there's no time that's really too soon. Inspiration doesn't tend to just fall in your lap as you go further along in your studies. In fact, it kind of seeps away. So start as soon as you can. Just write something, put something on a page, and especially for your ethics submission. Again, I think a lot of people want their ethics submission to be perfect. That's not what ethics is for. Ethics is there for you to get ethical clearance. So do what you need to do the reading, but just get a document, just send it to them before your ethics committee sits again, so that you can get an answer and then you can start with your research. That's from my experience.
Thank you. I think but I love it. Tell me, within your department, do the registrars have some protected time to do their research, or is this all after hours, or are your hours a bit flexible? How were you able to conduct it within 6 months?
So in our department, you can request some protected hours, but for the most part, it was expected that in your off time, this is something that you will do. So there's no dedicated MMED time that we are afforded, but it is something that you can request should you feel the need for it. I'm not exactly sure what kind of time frame you get. I think with us, when you will know at the NHLS, we are fortunate to get study leave. So I think that is lumped in together with your study leave that you get in every 2-year cycle.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Rattel, you had something to add?
Yeah, thanks. I think, Dr. Dix, I think were you contracted by NHLS? Because I think there's a difference. I mean, if you're contracted by a province for your registrar time, then the rules are slightly different. So in your contract, it will state that you are allowed, there's either 5 or 10% of your work week that you can dedicate to research. So some people, I mean, I know at UCT, we had 2 hours or 3 hours on a Thursday, but some people would try and combine it and then have like a full week or a full 2 weeks off. But in order to get that time off, you must have a plan. And when you come back, that plan must be achieved, because you can easily go on holiday or get sidetracked in that 2 weeks and then come back with 0 and then, say it's a research time. Dr. Harbour, I think this is also a good opportunity to then advocate for summer, because you also get to learn some rules here. And I know Renier is on the call, and there are some administrative things that protects registrars. So if you're scared to voice your concern, you can voice it as a class action. But there's definitely research time. I mean, you are somebody in training. With the austerity measures at the moment, it makes it difficult because there's vacant posts and everybody needs to pull their weight and maybe, work for 1.5 persons. But there is, in my contract, there was definitely time for research.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Shali, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Thank you, Chair. I just, with regards to the last question, yeah, I think the operative word was focus. And I just wanted to say that from my own experience, the best way to deal with your research is that you do it concurrently. I don't think the only time I guess you can focus on your research is when you're working on your write-up, and those that stage of your research project is dependent on where you are. As Dr. Dix has said, that we're very lucky in the NHLS where we do have protected time to sit down and write up your research dissertation. But before that, do it concurrently. spend a day during the week while you're studying, instead of doing your reading, just focus on typing up your protocol or doing your statistics, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's an interesting point, because in my experience, I found that I actually got more done when I did a little bit every day than when I thought that in this week, I'm just going to do research, and I was highly disappointed. And so I think if we're talking about big take-home messages from today, just to summarize, I would say, number one, keep it simple. The simpler, the better. Number two, start early. We cannot overstate that, because as Dr. Dix had said, the longer you are in the REG program, the more your priorities change. And I'm telling you, 6 months before CMSA exams, your priority will not be your MMED. So start early. And then number three is just get it done. Get it done. And lastly, we're here for you. Please do complete the survey. I think completing the survey will kind of guide us as a committee regarding what we can do for you, how we can best serve you, and maybe best empower our registrars. Sorry, just before we close, I see we have one more. Oh, sorry, it was just thank you. So yes, in closing, thank you everyone for joining us. I would like to thank the head office at SAMA for organizing this. Special shout out to Dr. Zianda for making sure that this was possible this evening. I saw that the SAMA chair also logged on. The head of publishing was also here. Everyone at head office who made this happen, thank you so much. Our registrars, thank you so much for joining this webinar. As I said, every 2 weeks, so not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, we'll have another registrar webinar on another aspect of your research. So please do continue to join us, do continue to engage with us. And you can contact anyone at SAMA who will get hold of one of the committee members should you have any challenges as a registrar. Lastly, please look out for our all expenses paid registrars writing retreat. I think that is important. Our main outcome from that retreat is that hopefully you get something significant that you can submit for marking or for publishing. So please keep an eye out for that. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.